Hey everyone, this is Candice Dickens, dope black therapist, with another amazing episode with another dope black therapist, Miss Keisha Ward. How are you doing today?
I am winning.
And for those of you who don't know Miss Ward, let me tell you about this dope therapy. She's a licensed mental health counselor. Is that how? 'Cause I know, and I'll say with LCPCs, but you're an LMHC.
Well, we are LCMHCs, licensed clinical mental health counselor.
Because the different states is different things. We call it
Yeah.
it's the same thing. We're both clinicians. But what
Mhm.
makes her a dope black therapist, and I'm going to write it down. I wrote it down so I can cheat. We've been in trainings together. You do somatic experiencing,
Mhm.
you do EFT
Mhm.
for couples, you do IFS, internal family systems.
Yes.
You're a brain spotting queen.
Well, I'll be a princess, but one day.
Oh, you gotta be modest. And are there any other modalities that you're trained in that I don't know? Because I know we've been in trainings and that's how we met.
Uh, I'm trained in EMDR, although honestly, I lean to brain spotting. That's my boo. Um, I'm trained in DBT and CPT. I'm um, trained in quite a few modalities that kind of help us heal in trauma or through trauma.
Oh, I
Um,
love it. And this is what the difference between a good clinician and a dope clinician, that we do the work so that we can do the work of healing trauma. So we're not a one, what's that, one pony, what's that expression?
yeah,
One trick pony. We just
yeah,
don't do one thing. We master in a couple of things because things happen to people. I know today we're talking about religious and spiritual trauma. And
mhm,
I thought this
mhm.
was such a great topic. I watched the movie Hung for Jesus. And I think you said you haven't watched it.
I've not seen
Oh my goodness.
it.
I
I
was
haven't.
in oh my goodness. I was in San Francisco with a friend and I'm sitting there, I got my blanket, got my little snacks, and I'm waiting for a hee hee ha ha moment. And there were hee hee ha ha moments, but that thing unfolded. And for those who haven't seen it, I don't want to give it away, but there was a lot of trauma in that movie that caused that church to be empty. And you
Mm,
get to see how in the African community how they reacted to that trauma of betrayal from a
mm.
pastor, a leader in the community. So I want to talk about your perspective about religious and spiritual trauma. What is it? And what are some signs with it? What's your experience with it? So we can just jump in. Let's talk.
All right. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm a trauma therapist, so I see a lot of different modalities, but I think this is the one that is probably nearest and dearest to my heart. Specifically because, well, one of the ones I'll say that, and then you'll talk to me, and I'll say another one. You're like, well, how many do you have? But specifically because I used to be a licensed pastor, um,
Mm,
and I stepped away from doing that to seek out to be a licensed therapist with the state, simply because I noticed that there were some things that I was missing,
yeah.
right? And there were some things I was seeing. So I know we titled it spiritual and religious trauma, but I just wanted to give a minute to say, like, really what uh, to kind of frame it up a little bit,
Okay.
right? So we have spiritual abuse, which is like the event or series that are happening after the person endures from a religious leader or an organization. And so when we talk about um, religious trauma or
Yeah.
spiritual trauma, we kind of talk about it as an overlay, almost, right? A more general form, which is ongoing as a result of the spiritual abuse. So, spiritual abuse can happen one time, but more often
Mhm.
it is ongoing and it is slow and it is subtle. Right. And so when we talk about religious trauma, then we can talk about how we react um, in response to the stimuli around us and the environment around us, like entering a church or hearing a particular phrase or a certain hymn. And not to say that this is religious trauma, but the way I like to do it is if I say God is good, people are going to say,
All the time.
and then they might say to me all the time, and then I would say, God is good, right?
Hmm.
And so, what happens with spiritual trauma and our spiritual abuse is it's kind of slow and it's ingrained and it's systemic, so
Mm,
much to the point that we really don't even notice it, right,
mm,
until we've gotten out, because there's also a mindset that kind of comes cloaked with why we would not call it that, especially within our community, when we're coming from a place where the only person who used to be able to read
mhm.
was the pastor,
Ah,
right? So you had to, because reading, if we're going back historically, which hey, Candice knows me, you never know where I'll go.
we're following you. We got you.
Catch me. So if we're going back historically, we're talking about a people who weren't allowed to read, the people who weren't allowed to.
Mm,
So oratory was very important, right? So a lot of us, well, a lot of our ancestors learned scripture by what they heard, not by what they read. So there had to be a lot of trust in this religious leader to give that oratory in the way that it was there, right?
right,
And so
right.
that's come down historically from generation to generation, that in our community we put a lot of trust and respect in those leadership spaces, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so when we talk about religious trauma itself, absolutely it can be like a one-time thing. Like if you're hearing something and it causes you to um, be feel emotionally manipulated,
Mm,
you could have some trauma as a result of that, but more often than not, it's an ongoing effect of fear and like debilitation and anxiety
mm.
that is kind of being laid and seated, right?
So when people are afraid, so when people say, you won't be blessed unless you give this much this to this religious institution, or you won't be blessed if you don't give your whole word, is that religious trauma?
Right.
Is
So
that
what we're doing in that moment is we're using manipulation and position and title.
mm,
So we're saying we have a position and we have a title, and the person is listening to that. So like we have a place of authority with this person. So the person is listening to that. Not only that, we're talking about a sovereign being. For if we're talking about culture in church, in the Black culture, right? We're talking about a sovereign being who sees all, who knows all, um, and who is just waiting for some of us. I don't know about y'all, but I used to go to church and youth group, and I got saved every Friday night,
mm-hmm,
right? Because of some of the things that were happening, or we were being told or being seen, right? God is waiting to punish you, was
yeah,
what it was. He sees what you're doing. Him and Santa Claus, right?
mm,
They existed together to see what you were doing, right? So yes, we're talking about that. This place of power that we have,
yeah,
right? I'm a leader. I have a place of power, and I also speak. I have authority over your life, right? Because that's some scripture, the way that scripture is given out,
yeah, yeah,
right? And I'm giving scripture, and so you're going to follow me. And so that can be a form of religious trauma when, or spiritual abuse, when I'm using my position to gain control, right? And
mm,
then I manipulate, using my position to manipulate, and in
yeah,
turn, you are being harmed and you are being affected. However, you don't see it that way,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because you see it as, if I don't do this, I will not be blessed.
Got it. So when we look at, like, I remember that thing about Guyana, where people followed Jim Jones, and would say,
Right,
"Wow, that's spiritual trauma." Or for some people who've been violated by the Catholic Church, who said, I had to do this, or
right,
and if I told them, God would be displeased with me. So that's part of trauma as well.
right,
Okay.
right, right. And basically what we're doing, because when we think about trauma and if we step away from spiritual trauma, we talk about emotional abuse, neglect, and we talk about physical and sexual abuse, right? So if
Mhm.
we're looking at spiritual trauma, we're talking about emotional abuse, but we're talking about using things of the spirit to be emotionally abusive to people.
Where they can't say no, they're powerless to say no, because there's that
Well,
element of shame. Like, if you don't
right,
do this, God's not going to be pleased. If you don't,
exactly.
uh,
Exactly, where they're holding shame, right? And that's a big one, shame, right? So a lot of people don't even know that they are have gone through spiritual abuse until after they come out of it. Like they may not feel right about the situation, and you may see people go from church to church to church, right? Because something in them doesn't feel right, but they don't recognize that there has been some abuse and some trauma
Yeah.
through some of the choices that their leadership has made, right? And that's the only way I can put it,
Yeah.
right? And so some of the ways that we may get that is, and we can't excuse certain things. So I'm gonna just say them. You know, spiritual trauma or religious trauma and abuse can happen through physical, emotional, or sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a position of power, and in scripture I hear a lot in the African American community: "Touch not my anointed, do my prophet no harm."
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm speaking against you or if I'm saying no to you,
Yeah.
right? Submit yourself to your leaders, right? These are ways that that can be happening,
Yeah.
right? Consistent fear-based teachings and education.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah. You know what's coming up for me is um, how Malcolm X had broken the Nation of Islam because he felt this was a violation of power with these young girls who were having all these babies, right,
Right,
by the head of the mosque of that religion.
right,
And that breakup really broke his heart. But he realized I can't watch people be violated. And I know that even in certain cultures, women are minimized and can't
mhm,
preach, can't speak up, have to be covered
right,
over. And it's traumatizing because they become invisible people and they lose their ability to have power.
right, right. And that's when we're using that religion or spirituality to manipulate others to behave a certain way, right? Even
Mm,
down to like you said, how we have to dress. Like women must dress modestly, right? So we're talking about this way of them having to wear no earrings. They always have to wear um skirts,
yeah.
right? Or some people do wear hijabs, right? And so even when we're talking, like I know someone who is Muslim and he um was speaking out about certain things,
Mm,
right? And he was saying, yes, there are certain things that are a part of our culture, right? But then there are certain things that are like a misrepresentation of
mm,
what this Quran really means,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, so any education that imposes shame on a learner about their body and even their natural human functions, and being rejected or judged harshly by your friends or people that you want to be intimate with or care about
Mm,
on the basis of religious observance or non-observance, right? So spiritual trauma can occur within that organization, within that body, within that being,
yeah.
or spiritual abuse can occur under many facets, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what you said the word shame, but one of the words that we often use would be condemnation,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And condemnation
right.
equals you feeling shameful.
Mm,
And so we're saying now, therefore, there is no condemnation. But sometimes we come out feeling condemned versus feeling convicted,
mm.
right?
Wow. So when people say, you know what, like I'm thinking of a religious group where they condemn, the elders come together and they condemn the people, and they're like the living dead, where they can't connect with the religious affiliations anymore, the relationships, the family members. So they are excommunicated for a certain number of years, but
Hmm.
they've been condemned. Um, and it's like they have no family.
Right.
And that can be
Right.
very traumatic to live in a community that you're around people who you love, but you can't be acknowledged and you can't be touched.
Right.
So that
Mhm.
and what is the difference between cultural traditions and trauma? Because some people say I'm thinking about the um, the religion where in Africa where circumcision, female circumcision
Pretty
is.
much circumcision, yeah.
What is the line between what's a religious practice and spiritual and religious abuse? What is the difference between that?
Well, I would say, and I know people may not agree with this, but I don't believe that we can make a decision for someone that is harmful to them, their bodies or their beings physically or
Mm,
spiritually or emotionally, and then say that is a culture or a tradition.
mm,
Because trauma is about the person, not the entity itself, right? So if this person is experiencing um, some things around something that has happened to them,
Yeah.
that's trauma, right? Whether or not anyone else agrees with it is not an issue. And especially for kids, because you're talking about circumcising someone who's a child,
Mhm.
right? And so that then comes in and plays a whole different role when we're talking about trauma, right? So when we talk about culture and tradition,
Mhm.
right, and we talk about trauma, there are some things culturally that can be traumatic to children.
Yeah.
And just because it's our belief that this is what we're supposed to practice doesn't mean that that thing is healthy for that child. So it's not about, sometimes I'll say, this is not about right or wrong, it's about healthy or unhealthy,
Yeah.
right?
And level of harm.
Right.
Right. Because there's, one of the things we've got to be mindful of that sometimes we have westernized beliefs. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we'll look at people who have scarring and we'll go, oh, that's traumatic. And they'll say, no, it wasn't a trauma. It was part of my religious ceremony.
Right.
And they weren't psychologically harmed. But some
Right.
people are harmed by it and they have symptoms similar to a trauma, like a post traumatic
Right.
stress disorder.
Because trauma is subjective. We both can be a part of a situation and I not be traumatized by it, and you maybe, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, like I'll take it back to something simple, which is like piercing ears, right? Some people think that the child doesn't know what's going on. It inflicts trauma upon them pre-verbally to pierce their ears,
Mm.
right? Other people would look at it and be like, no, they're not traumatized by it, right? But then one might think, well, is that why this child doesn't like needles or things
Mm.
that are piercing? Like, is there something pre-verbal here that's happening that they know to already be alarmed about this, right? Outside of just um, having these things go on too when we're getting vaccinated and things like that. And you hear little people in my background. Hey, people, little people in the background. Little people, I'm
I
doing
love
something.
you, little people.
I knew they were gonna come out for y'all today. I knew they were.
That's all right.
So when we're talking about, ma'am, so when we're talking about trauma, right, what we have to recognize is that it's subjective, right? And it does factor in a level of harm in the person and how we see it, right? A 12-year-old who may be, or 13-year-old who may have gone through the rites of passage and have an understanding of what's happening with their body is totally different than a 3 or 4-year-old who might be being held down and circumcised,
Mm-hmm.
or having the clitoris cut off. That's totally different. And so we can't say something is not traumatic to a person because it is subjective to that. Right. So overall, we can't do that. Even though we may feel like it's not traumatic, then we're imposing ourselves on that person and what our thoughts are. Like when our child skins their knee for the first time, right? And we're like, oh, it's not that bad. Well, their skin coming off, and that's the first time they've ever seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna fall full out
Yeah.
sometimes around that, right? Because they don't know. So that is the difference. Y'all want to come answer my door? Just my door outside.
Kids are going. No, I won't answer no door for you.
Yeah. Come answer my door. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So that's what that is. Now, when we talk about some signs and symptoms of religious trauma, right? One of the biggest things, and this is any traumatic. I'm gonna have to pause just for 1 second because my friend is gonna keep on going. Okay, so I'm gonna let.
It's okay. So I'm gonna just respond to something she said about trauma. When we were getting ready for this, I wrote down some recent incident. I think there was a pastor from New York City who had stolen money from the clergy, and that's traumatic because it goes to I can't trust. And
Right.
trauma is anything that creates that feeling of instability and lack of trust and out of control. So when we hear pastors or priests or imams who are doing things, or Buddhist spiritual leaders who are doing something where there's lack of trust, they're violating people who are coming sometimes because they're broken and they're looking for a place that's like a parental place. And it's almost like the moon has gone down and your heart's broken because you have given them trust, because you're hoping that they can heal you or relate to you or give you something that you've been hungering for. So going back to what you said, what are some of the signs?
Yeah. So, and if I can piggyback off of what you just said, one of the things too is that we can't even recognize that that has been violated until after the fact because of that level of power
Mm-hmm.
that we give to that person to speak over our life or to know more than what we know.
Yes.
right? Or to guide us. Like
Mm,
if we, our spiritual leaders or our spiritual fathers, right? And these aren't incorrect terms, but they do come with responsibility,
mm,
double the responsibility, right? And
mm.
so it just depends, it, how we see something and our ability to see something when it's happening can somebody sometimes be cloaked,
Yeah.
right,
Uh,
through the relationship itself. So that's why some of us can sit back and not be in a situation and be like, oh my goodness, that is abusive,
yeah.
right? And someone else be like, oh no, it's okay.
Yeah. Because you don't want to see it. And I think that's the other part. Because when you see it, and if it's spiritual or religious and you see it and your family's connected to it, speaking out
Mhm.
against this means the whole family gets removed and they
The
maybe
whole
have a
family
special,
gets
yeah,
removed.
and you get to be
Right.
identified as the problem,
Right.
right? And it's,
Because you talked about that, about excommunication,
yeah,
and that does happen in certain um, religious communities where if you even want to no longer choose to practice your faith in that way, you're excommunicated,
yeah. It
right?
makes people,
Cut off.
yeah. And that's part of the isolation that happens with someone who
Mhm,
has trauma. They feel
mhm.
isolated and they have to keep secrets.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you see the documentary on Netflix called John, was it John of God, where he was having the whole clergy close their eyes and he was sexually molesting or violating women right in front of people, and they felt like they couldn't say anything, and he would masturbate and he would say, "It's God's whole." They wanted to believe so much in miracles that whatever he did, they think this is of God,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
they felt too conflicted. Like I don't want my mother not to believe in this person because he created a miracle. So who am I?
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
right. Yeah. So, common issues that emerge out of spirit trauma are like some of them are like feeling angry with God, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
angry with God. Um, and then we can have this unshakable sense of feeling unsettled and empty, be very fearful, right? Because we can feel like we don't have ultimate control over our lives. And I mean, and I'll say it in terms of management, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
we can feel like we've been kind of pushed out and left there by ourselves, and we can have a sense of identity lost, right? Because a lot of people who participate in organized religion, right? And I say it that way specifically because there's a difference between, for me, between organized religion and a relationship with um with my spiritual beliefs, right? There's a difference. And so it when we're doing that, right, we can feel ostracized and put out and from the community,
Yeah.
right, that we were a part of, and therefore we can experience trust issues. And I can be transparent, this wasn't spiritual trauma for me, but when I left a particular church that I had been in for years, I can count on one hand the number of people and I was in ministry in there, and I can count on one hand the number of people who kept connecting with me, right?
Mm. Wow.
So imagining having that when you've been traumatized, right? Your sense of identity is gone. You feel like you can't trust anyone in relationships anymore, and
Mm.
you carry this deep sense of shame because there are people who are like, well, if you leave this body, then you're gone, like you're lost, right? So just like anyone else who experiences trauma, we can have emotional responses to that. We can be depressed. We can have anxiety or other mental health disorders. We can feel isolated,
Yeah.
right? We can lack confidence in who we are, but primarily because I tell people that who you are was who you were conditioned to be, not who you were created to be.
Mm.
Who you were created to be, we will journey together and discover, right? Because who you were created to be has been with you since the foundation that you were knit together in your mother's womb,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Life and circumstances have conditioned you, and we found ourselves together on this path, right?
Mm.
And so who you are already lies within you. It's just my job to help you see the obstacles, support you in removing the obstacles so that you would grow. And that's one of the reasons why, I have a tree as my logo because it's like heal the roots and the
Yeah.
tree will grow,
Oh, I love it. Oh, I
right?
love it.
So, um, People
Mm,
with trauma, spiritual trauma, can have poor interpersonal boundaries, right? I
yeah,
don't know how far to come. If you break the relationship, I can be very anxious about that. Nightmares, a lot of things that we can see with what we would call quote unquote regular trauma, we're gonna see with spiritual trauma, because trauma affects our brain,
absolutely. Oh,
right?
absolutely. Preach it. Absolutely.
So I would give Braynisha, but it's not brain spotting y'all. But she over here. He over here. So trauma affects our brain, right? And so when we are in these spaces where our brain, the structures in our brain, right, the anatomical structures which have a physiological function in our brain are being affected, then how we react, our ability to react and respond is going to follow that accordingly,
Absolutely.
right? And
Absolutely.
so yeah, it's not going to be much different, right? Except when I look towards when someone comes to journey with me and gives me the honor of journeying with them and they've had religious or spiritual trauma. um there are I am very integrative in the modalities that I use, because I believe that your nervous system will speak the language,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then I'll say, hey, this modality um, is going to help heal, right? It's going to support your healing. And so, internal family systems, or IFS, right, where we can look at this part of us
Mm-hmm.
that feels this way, brain
Mm.
spotting, where we can get to our subcortical, right? And IFS brain spotting, a lot of them will say we're going to get to the subcortical, but I think we have to partner together with all of these modalities, because
Absolutely.
we're very complex beings, so we can't be one modality doesn't hold everything for everyone.
Yeah.
So IFS, sometimes I start with CPT, which is cognitive processing therapy, and then I integrate in the other
Mm-hmm.
modalities as they come.
Create this interweave of healing.
This
Right?
interweave
Because
of
it's
healing.
it's there. There's this actor, I forgot his name, but he was in Pose, and he talked about being sexually abused by his mother's boyfriend, and then being at the church, and he was a feminine young man, well, it's a boy, and then being abused there emotionally, feeling like, wow, my voice is great for me to sing, but I'm not wanted here, and not being
Right.
in out this relationship that felt very abusive because he felt conflicted at home,
Mhm.
with that abuse and with this abuse. And what I do like is that you're saying that there is healing that's possible through the use of different modalities,
Mhm.
right? Which is
Yeah. And the biggest thing, like one of the most healing things, is attunement, right? How we
mm,
show up together. And someone's shared, and I love this. They said resonance is the energy. Attunement is how I attune to that
mm,
energy between us, right? And
absolutely.
co-regulation is me lending the healing from my system to you to bring a
Mm,
stable foundation for you to do the work
connection.
that you need
Yeah,
to do,
yeah.
right?
It's amazing
And
that we're both using our hands talking about the dance.
yes,
Movement.
yes, right. And so when so that's saying, we can go Rogerian, right? Person center, like our relationship, right, is going to be a relationship that's different, because we have one of the things that we pay attention to it is that there have been no healthy relationships. So
Mm,
there's a process in building that therapeutic rapport,
yes.
right? So I don't sit down and be like, oh, okay, well, you got these 12 sessions, because the thing is that your system at this point has been conditioned not to trust. I'm no different,
Mm,
right? So we work toward that. That's the first step, right? And then providing other resourcing and skills, so that when we're not together this hour, or these 2 hours a week, whatever you feel like you need, or 2 hours a month, that you can support your system
mm,
in the way that you need to support your system,
yeah.
right? And then we continue the work with the integration of brain spotting, internal family systems, somatic experiencing, um, and even EFT and CPT
I love
primarily.
it.
Mhm.
What's coming up for me, I could listen to you forever. Is I remember speaking to someone and they were like, you just, all you do is listen. I'm like, you, I've got so many skills in me. You don't know what I'm doing. Right. And this is what makes you such a dope therapist, Keisha, is that you're a healer. Right. And you're looking at the system of someone who's been abused, that's a dysregulated system, and you connect them to your system that's more regulated, and you really create a sense of trust so they can process that. How do people get to know you? How do they get to find you? Do you have a website?
Yo, I am so low key. It is not even funny. Most of the time, it's word of mouth. I am. I know. I know. I know. I'm a
We're
shout
going
out.
to do high key, sister.
Yeah, and the thing about it is I have to shout out to my daughter because, like, she's been working on my website. She's like, "Mom, mom, mom," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay," but because people are finding me. Um, but anyone who wants to get in contact with me can get in contact with me by reaching out, Keisha at The Gathering Place, um, WCC.org. So it's TheGatheringPlace, and I use that from the word harambe, we gather together, right? Um, and that's what it is for me. It's like gathering us all
Mhm.
together, and recognizing the seasons that we're in, and being able to be present together, to bring healing, because there's healing in community, right? There's hurt
Absolutely.
there. And there's healing there, and both of those things sometimes coexist. So I am very honored to be a part of the healing.
Wonderful. And for those who didn't get that, get a pen, piece of paper, get your little phone out. I'm going to have repeat it again. I just want them to give them the time to get something. Healing is possible. And what I like about this show is that I bring on these amazing dope therapists who talk about healing and talk about issues that matter to all our communities.
Mhm.
If you're someone who's looking for a dope therapist, seek out Keisha. Keisha Ward is her name. She'll give you her information again. As you know, here's a plug for my thing. I have a
Mhm.
trauma provider directory called Color of Trauma and Healing. Don't put no the in it. Color of Trauma and Healing has a listing of trauma therapists, whether they're acupuncture, massage therapists, doulas, counselors. It's all clinicians. It's like Wakanda for therapists. So we also offer this two-sided card that the back has 31 trauma techniques and the front has national hotlines to for free. Has national. I even pay for the posters, girl. Has the national hotlines so that if you're in crisis, you don't have to be alone and struggle alone. So now that I've said all that good thing, I'm Candice Dickens, and once again, Keisha, how can I reach you?
Oh, I just realized I probably should spell my name Keisha, the little at sign, TheGatheringPlace, WCC.org. That's Keisha at the Gathering Place, WCC.org.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you so much, sister, for honoring us. You're
You are
amazing.
very welcome. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this journey that you're sharing. I think is a beautiful thing, bringing
That,
us all together.
oh, thank you. Good night, everyone.
Night, folk.
Bye.